The patient in bed 4 had been dead for 6 hours, so nobody could explain why she was sitting up. Nurse Amanda Reyes had worked the night shift at Mercy General for 11 years. She had seen things that day shift nurses never saw. The way hospitals changed after midnight, the way the lights hummed differently, the way patients who had been stable all day would suddenly decline the moment the sun went down, as if darkness gave whatever was wrong inside them permission to get worse. She was not easily scared. She was practical and tired and good at her job, and she did not believe in things that didn't have explanations. Then she met the woman in bed 4. The woman had come in through the ER on a Tuesday. Elderly, no ID, no family, found unconscious on a park bench 3 blocks from the hospital. She had been given the name Jane Doe and placed in a long-term observation ward on the 3rd floor. She never woke up. She never spoke. She lay in bed 4 with her eyes closed and her breathing shallow and the monitors tracking a heartbeat that grew slower every night until Thursday at 9 p.m. when it stopped entirely. The doctor on call pronounced her. The body was tagged and the Family Services Department was notified and a call was placed to the morgue for pickup. Standard procedure. Sad but routine. Amanda checked on bed 4 at 3 a.m. because she always did her rounds at 3 a.m. The curtain around the bed was drawn the way the previous shift had left it. She pulled it back. Jane Doe was sitting upright with her hands folded in her lap and her eyes open. Amanda did not scream. Her throat closed before sound could come out. She stood with the curtain in her hand and looked at the dead woman sitting in the dead woman's bed, and the dead woman looked back with eyes that were open in the technical sense, but focused on something that was not in the room, something far beyond the walls, something Amanda was suddenly very grateful she could not see. The monitor beside the bed was still flatlined. No heartbeat, no breath. The chest did not move. The eyes did not blink. Jane Doe was sitting up with the particular stillness of something that had never been animated by anything as ordinary as a pulse. Amanda stepped back and hit the call button in the hallway, and when the night supervisor came and looked through the curtain gap, she made a sound low in her throat and called the on-call doctor, and the on-call doctor came and looked and said nothing for a very long time, and then said they needed to call someone, and nobody was sure exactly who you called for this. They stood in the hallway outside the curtain bed and made phone calls and spoke in low voices, and every few minutes one of them would look through the gap to confirm that Jane Doe was still sitting up, and she always was hands folded, eyes open, looking at something patient and far away. At 4:47 a.m., she lay back down. All 3 of them saw it happen. Slow, like someone lowering themselves carefully, like someone returning from somewhere they had been and settling back into the position they had left. Her eyes closed. Her hands unfolded and rested at her sides. She looked exactly as she had looked when they pronounced her 7 hours earlier. The morgue team arrived at 6 a.m. and took her, and the paperwork was filed, and the official record shows a standard deceased patient transfer and nothing else, because what would you write in the official record? What box do you check? Amanda transferred to a different ward the following week. She still works nights because she says she doesn't know how to sleep when it's dark anymore, and at least at work, she has something to do with the feeling. She doesn't talk about bed 4 to new staff. But when nurses who have worked 3rd floor for a while ask her why she left the observation ward, she just says one thing. She says it wasn't the sitting up that got her. She could have eventually explained that away. The time clock showed 37 employees on shift. There were 36 people in the building. Danny Marsh ran overnight at a fulfillment warehouse on the edge of the city, a massive metal building the size of 3 football fields where packages moved along conveyor belts through the night, while a crew of mostly silent workers scanned and sorted and stacked until sunrise. Danny had managed night shift for 4 years, and he knew his crew by name and by face, and by the particular way each of them moved through the warehouse at 2 a.m. when the body was tired and only habit kept things going. He noticed a number on a Thursday. 37 clocked in. He counted his crew twice and got 36 both times and assumed a system error and logged it and moved on. Friday night, 37 again. He pulled the clock in records and found the extra entry. Badge number 1149. clocked in at midnight exactly, same as everyone else. He ran 11:49 through the employee system, and it came back as an inactive badge, a worker who had left the company 8 months earlier. A man named Gerald Cook who had worked night shift for 2 years and then stopped showing up. HR had marked him as a no-call, no-show termination. His badge had been deactivated. A deactivated badge cannot clock in. The system does not allow it. The door scanners do not read inactive badges. Gerald Cook could not be in the building. Badge 1149 clocked out at 6 a.m. with everyone else. Danny put cameras on the clock-in station the following week. The next Thursday at midnight, he watched the live feed from his office while his crew arrived and badged in and took their stations. At 12 a.m. exactly, between two other employees, the badge reader beeped and the screen flashed 1149, Cook, Gerald, and the camera showed nobody standing at the reader. An empty space between two people who didn't appear to notice anything unusual. Both of them moved on to the floor without looking back. The badge reader beeped for nobody and recorded a clock in for a man who had not worked there for 8 months, and the empty space moved into the warehouse, and Danny sat in his office and watched it on camera and could track it by the way his employees unconsciously moved around it. Small adjustments in their paths, a half step to the side, the natural human behavior of making room for something nearby, except there was nothing nearby that any of them could see. It worked in Section D every night. Danny could track it by watching his crew. Whatever it was knew the job. It moved the right direction on the belt line. It stood in the right place. After a while, Danny could predict exactly where it would be at any point in the shift because it followed a pattern he recognized as the pattern of a long-time night shift worker who had done the same job so many times the body remembered it without thinking. Danny called HR and asked quietly about Gerald Cook, what kind of worker he had been, whether he had been close to anyone on the crew. The HR rep said Gerald had been a good worker, said he had worked night shift for 2 years and never missed a day, and then one Thursday simply hadn't come in and hadn't called and hadn't responded to any contact, and his emergency contact number was disconnected, and they had eventually moved on. Danny asked if anyone had ever found out what happened to Gerald. The HR rep was quiet for a moment. Then she said no. Nobody had ever found out. He had simply stopped coming to work one day. Just never showed up again. These things happen sometimes with night shift workers. People disappeared into their own lives, and you never knew why. Danny didn't say what he was thinking. He thanked her and hung up and went back to watching the camera feed, where his crew moved through the warehouse in the particular tired rhythm of 3 a.m., and in Section D, the space that badge 1149 occupied moved steadily and methodically. Kevin Park almost didn't watch the tape. He almost just filed it and went home. He wishes every day that he had. Kevin worked overnight security at a large office building downtown. 12 floors, mostly law firms and accounting offices, empty by 7 p.m. on weekdays and completely deserted on weekends. His job was simple. Walk the floors every 2 hours. Watch the monitors. Write in the log. Nothing ever happened. That was the whole point. Nothing ever happened, and Kevin was paid to make sure nothing ever happened, and for 2 years nothing ever did. Then Floor 6 started showing up on the motion sensors. It began on a Wednesday, 2:18 a.m. The sensor for the East Corridor on Floor 6 triggered, and Kevin watched the monitor, and the corridor was empty, and after 5 minutes the sensor reset. He logged it as a possible malfunction and did his rounds and checked Floor 6 and found nothing and went back to his desk. It happened again Thursday at 2:18 a.m. exactly. Same sensor. Same empty corridor, same 5-minute duration. Kevin noted it was the exact same time and logged a maintenance request. Friday at 2:18 a.m., the sensor triggered, and this time Kevin watched the monitor more carefully because the exact same time 3 nights in a row was not a malfunction. He watched the empty corridor on the screen, and at first he saw nothing, and then he saw it, and his hand stopped moving toward his coffee cup and stayed stopped for a long time. The motion sensor was triggering because something was moving in the corridor. He could see it now that he was looking for it. Not a person, not an animal, A distortion in the image, a warping of the corridor's straight lines, like heat rising from hot asphalt, but shaped, roughly, wrongly, like a standing figure. Moving slowly down the corridor toward the east stairwell. The camera was picking up movement that his eyes couldn't fully process as a solid thing. Just a bending of the air. Just a shape that the corridor's geometry curved around like water around a stone. It reached the stairwell door. The door opened. No hand on the handle. No visible contact. The door just swung inward, and the distortion moved through it, and the door closed, and the sensor reset. Kevin sat at his desk for a while. Then he did his job, because his job was the only framework he had for the next 10 minutes. He walked the floors. He checked floor 6. The east corridor was empty and straight and normal. The stairwell door was closed. He went down the stairwell to floor 5 and floor 4, checking doors, and found nothing, and went back to his desk, and at 2:18 a.m. the following night, he did not watch the monitor. He learned that from then on. He did not watch the monitor at 2:18 a.m. He got up and made coffee and stood with his back to the screens between 2:15 and 2:25, and whatever moved through floor 6 every single night moved through it without an audience. This worked fine for 3 weeks. He told himself it was a camera glitch, and he almost believed it. Then one night, he forgot to not watch. He sat back down at 2:17 with his coffee and looked at the screen out of habit, and the corridor was already warping, and the shape was already moving, and it was closer to the camera than it had ever been, and as it passed directly beneath the camera, it stopped. For the first time in 3 weeks, it stopped moving. It stood beneath the camera, and the corridor bent around it, and Kevin stared at the monitor, and then slowly, like a person tilting their head, the distortion moved upward toward the camera lens, and Kevin had the very clear feeling that whatever it was had just realized it was being watched. That he quit the next morning. He left his log and his key card on the desk and walked out at 6 a.m. and did not answer the building manager's calls for 2 weeks. When he finally picked up, he said it was a personal matter and he was sorry for leaving without notice, and no, he didn't want to discuss the security footage from floor 6. The building manager said that was fine. So they had reviewed the footage themselves. So they were going to delete it. Kevin asked if they had watched it closely. The manager paused and said yes, they had watched it. Kevin asked what they thought it was. Another pause, long enough that Kevin could hear the manager breathing. We're going to delete it, the manager said again, and hung up.